We have confronted and will continue to confront HIV/AIDS in our own country. And to meet a severe and urgent crisis abroad, tonight I propose the emergency plan for AIDS relief, a work of mercy beyond all current international efforts to help the people of Africa.
PEPFAR is a program that we put in place to stop the pandemic of AIDS on the continent of Africa. It turned out to be an effective program because millions of lives are saved. Most people listening to this master class and most people in the country have no idea what PEPFAR is, when in fact it is a health initiative that saved millions of lives. Early in my administration, Condoleezza Rice came and said, "Mr. President, are you aware there's a pandemic destroying an entire generation of people on the continent of Africa?" And I said, we better do something about this, because I believe all life is precious. And I believe to whom much is given, much is required, and a lot has been given to our nation. I recognize the United States can't solve every problem, but we can tackle the big ones. And I made it a priority of my administration to develop a strategy to deal with the pandemic. I was somewhat derailed by my plan for the United States to take the lead in this initiative because Secretary Powell and Secretary Thompson of HHS thought it would be best if the United States joined an international coalition of countries aimed at trying to solve this problem. I was reluctant because the United Nations, while a useful debating society, is not very effective at getting things done because authority and responsibility are not aligned. It's hard to hold anybody to account within that international organization if you're trying to achieve certain results. But I agreed, and so we set up a fund. I remember we was in the Rose Garden, and Kofi Annan, the head of the United Nations, came and we announced a global fund to tackle AIDS. The United States would match. And we addressed problems so grave and suffering so great. My guests today have been doing their part and more. For our part, I am today committing the United States of America to support a new worldwide fund with a founding contribution of $200 million. But nobody showed up. I mean, a few countries might have put some money in. And after a period of time, I remember calling Connie and said, "Connie, find out about that global fund. Here's a pandemic destroying an entire generation, and yet the global fund sat empty." And I said, "Forget it, we're going alone. Develop a strategy for the 17 most affected nations." And they did. It was a collaborative effort. We had people in the State Department, people at HHS, people inside the White House. We convinced a former CEO of Eli Lilly to come and set up the strategy. It was a pretty easy business plan. Here are the goals. How do we get antiretrovirals to people all across the 17 affected countries? How do we get antiretrovirals at a reasonable price so the American taxpayer can afford a lot of them? How do we get the word out about how to prevent the spread of AIDS? And I asked a lot of questions about, how do you get antiretroviral drugs to remote villages in Uganda, for example? And ultimately, what do we do about orphans? Because one of the sad dividends of the pandemic was there was a lot of boys and girls without moms and dads. One of the effective things about this program is we included faith-based groups into the delivery of antiretroviral drugs, as well as information as to how to stop the spread of AIDS. Catholic Charities, for example, has a significant presence across Africa, and we incorporated them into the strategy. And so we effectively used their networks to get antiretroviral drugs to them. Anyway, I was pleased with the response I got from these questions. And in other words, the importance of achieving objectives is to stay focused on the big goals. And the big goal here was saving lives. And I think once people realized that, they understood that it was important to stay focused on that goal. One of the interesting things about American leadership was once the United States put a plan in place, and once we executed the plan, and once it became apparent that it would work, the global fund filled up. We had authority and responsibility properly aligned because we worked with affected governments. We said, if you want our help, you develop a plan for your country. Of course, we provided assistance to make sure they understood, what could work, what couldn't work. And when the plans were in place and Congress funded the initiative, this great country got after it. When we launched PEPFAR, our goal was to support treatment for 2 million people in 5 years. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we have exceeded that goal early.
What PEPFAR has always stood for is ability to work in partnership with countries in an innovative and adapted way. And haven't we all had to innovate and adapt over the last 10 months? The number of lives that have been saved, now over 20 million, but critically, almost 3 million babies born HIV-free. And many of those babies now are over 18, entering professional school, are working today, alive today, because of the strong work we have done together.